My name is Jared Dawson. I'm a journalist currently living in Cape Town, South Africa, and today we're here at the Castle of Good Hope. The Palestinian Solidarity Campaign is hosting an event here to commemorate Nakba Day. There are a lot of parallels between the apartheid in the history of South Africa and the apartheid affecting Palestinians today. We're going to investigate some of these parallels and hear what South Africans have to say about Palestinian solidarity.
There's a single word in history and in the English language which describes such conduct: sheer barbarism.
Just 2 weeks ago, Palestinian-American journalist Shireen Abu Akleh was assassinated by Israeli military forces, just days before May 15th, the anniversary of the Nakba. So why did hundreds of South Africans gather here at the Castle of Good Hope?
Okay, this place is the Castle of Good Hope. This was the center of Dutch colonialism, and more settlers from the Netherlands came and settled here, systematically took over land from the indigenous people, which is the Khoi and the San people, and literally exterminated them as well. Genocide was the approach by the Dutch settlers.
So today, South Africans gathered at the Castle of Good Hope because understanding the colonization of South Africa by Europeans helps us to understand what has happened in Palestine. Today, they have gathered to commemorate the anniversary of the Nakba. So what is the Nakba? Al-Nakba. It means the catastrophe in Arabic. It happened on May 15, 1948, when more than 750,000 Palestinians were forcefully displaced from their homes and into refugee camps. But the Nakba did not start or end in 1948. After centuries of persecution, Jewish people no longer felt safe living in Europe. At the beginning of the 20th century, the British-supported Zionist movement saw Palestine as prime for a Jewish homeland and began settling in Palestine. The Palestinian people resisted, first through staged demonstrations, and then through a full-fledged revolt. And after years of conflict, the British ended their mandate in Palestine and left in 1947, leaving behind a well-armed and equipped Jewish population. The State of Israel was declared on May 14, 1948. The surrounding Arab nations declared war with the objective of liberating Palestine. Although the Arab world supported Palestine, the newly formed Israel had the military, political, and financial support of many foreign nations. This brings us to May 15, 1948, Al-Nakba. Zionists destroyed hundreds of villages. 750,000 Palestinians were forced into exile, and more than 13,000 were killed. As the Nakba was happening on the Palestinian homeland, thousands of kilometers away, apartheid begins in South Africa. Today, the Nakba continues. More and more illegal Israeli settlements are built on Palestinian territories, and Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza are subject to military rule. Palestinians continue to demand their right to return to their homes, and to them, the Nakba will not end until this right is granted. The restriction of rights, seizure of land, and state-sanctioned violence are all too familiar to South Africans. There are Cape Townians, many of them who are Muslim, who remember District 6, a cosmopolitan neighborhood in the city center in which people of different races and religions lived together until the apartheid government forcefully removed the residents and destroyed the neighborhood in the 1970s. Apartheid technically ended in 1994, but South Africans continue to demand justice for South Africa and Palestine alike.
Now what's interesting about our history is that the very same process has unfolded in Palestine. The Nakba hasn't stopped. From Europe, Britain, the USA, etc. The same forces
are oppressing us here in this country and globally, and it's been happening over 400 years. That is the relationship between our struggle and the struggle of the Palestinians.
South Africans showed their solidarity in many ways. They displayed Palestinian flags and protest posters. This bookshop was selling radical books about freedom movements, informational pamphlets about companies to boycott. We heard speeches from local youth and their support of the movement.
And it was very sad to find out that so many people were suffering over just a piece of land.
Musicians and singers came as well. And this artist who created an installation.
Right? So there were 117 people that were killed in detention, but there are 118 graves. And that extra grave is symbolic of those who were tortured at the hands of the apartheid security police, but also for the ongoing apartheid that's happening around the world.
Then there were the runners for the freedom of Palestine.
My name is Kamil Sulaiman. I'm part of the Runners for the Freedom of Palestine. We have done many big platform races carrying the Palestinian flag, the London Marathon and Berlin Marathon. At the London Marathon, I was wearing a special costume for a Guinness World Record, dressed as a leprechaun. I broke the record by 89 seconds. Congratulations. Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, Guinness World Record. But the point is to effectively express our solidarity with the oppressed people of Palestine.
More than just protesting, South Africans are calling on the government to sanction the Israeli government. South Africans remember how the international community placed sanctions on the apartheid government. Governments such as the United States used trade tariffs which weakened the South African economy.
A ban on loans to the South African government, except certain loans.
Even the Formula One circuit decided to not continue racing in South Africa due to apartheid. And these South Africans hope to pressure the Israeli government to grant freedom to Palestinians.
At this moment in our history, we must recommit ourselves to continue the struggle for the freedom of Palestine. Mr. Biden says it's a war crime. Some say it's a crime against humanity. What must happen and should happen is a political reaction of those in power, and they failed to do so.
Even though South Africa is 7,000 kilometers away from the conflict, the Palestinian freedom movement is alive even here. South Africans recognize the system of apartheid affecting Palestinians, and they're expressing dissent in their own way, calling on the South African government and the international community to put real pressure on Israel. And to be honest, South Africans are still fighting against apartheid in their own country. Although these systems were technically abolished in 1994, they live on today through the economic disparities still present here in South Africa. South Africans are fighting for their own freedom, as well as the freedom of Palestinians. People across the world are still facing the effects of colonization 400 years later. Thank you to the Palestinian Solidarity Campaign for hosting this event and demonstrating their passion for the freedom of people all over the world.